Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature, video number 198, Thesaurus Incantatus. This is a very, very interesting work, 66 pages I believe, so it's, a little bit longer than some that I've been releasing. Link in the description to my edition of this work on Amazon, second and third links to my books blogs. This work is very strange because it's actually in two parts. The work itself, the actual text that's meant to be the work, is fairly short. It's only about 20 pages overall of material. And it's basically a long allegory, a metaphor with regards to alchemy. It's talking about all alchemical processes all the way up through the final purification of the sorcerer's stone, so to speak. The philosophic stone, it terms it. Basically from the gross material, purifying and so forth. And it takes this the form of a story. A short story in which this individual, the alchemist, is being sort of led around and shown these various fantastic things. It's very metaphoric. If you've studied anything about alchemy, you'll kind of understand what it's talking about. Otherwise, you'd be like, wow, this is a really weird fantasy. And actually, originally, I wasn't going to release this book because I couldn't determine the date of manufacture. I finally managed to confirm that, so I was able to determine it's out of copyright. You gotta be careful. You gotta be a stickler with such things. And the second part, which is far longer, the reason why I included that, other than the page length would have been inordinately low if I didn't, it's a listing of books that were available from the publisher of this particular work for sale, but it describes them in enough depth that it's not just a standard sort of, well, you can get this book right to, the publishing house at 98 whatever street in London. It's not like that. It's more of a short write-up about works that might be a good springboard for anyone who's an occultist. Like if you're buying this because you're interested in alchemy, let's say. Okay, you get this book. It's got a laundry list of other works, not just within alchemy, but everything all the way up through sort of fortune-telling divination, mysticism. It's got works, certain like religious studies and stuff like that. I think there's about 100 different listings in there. And so a lot of these are books I had never heard of. So trust me, I'm definitely using this as my own springboard. As an actual occultist and as a purveyor of this kind of arcane material, it's an extremely valuable little work. I've actually got several works in my own physical collection, literally on the bookshelf over here, that are from a publishing house over in England of arcane and occult materials. And I've used that as a springboard as well, actually. Those are from the 80s, but the publisher still exists. This one's from the 1880s, so, doesn't exist anymore, sadly. But it's sort of a write-up of these different works and the basics generally of what they contain. I think there are about 10 different alchemical works that it lists alone. Of course, that would be of interest potentially to the reader because, what's the story about? It's an allegorical alchemical work. I think it's mainly meant to be a spiritualistic and fictional overlap onto chemical alchemy. Sometimes it's the obverse. Sometimes in alchemy you've got something that talks about chemical reactions and it's really trying to tell you about spiritual things. Sometimes it's telling you spiritual things that are actually metaphors for chemical processes. Both actually exist, and sometimes they're meant to be taken literally. This is how you create the elixir, and it's like a recipe for that. Here's, the spiritual allegory of the stone or something, and it's literally meant to be spiritual. It's sort of a Christian tract or a hermetic sort of work. So you've got all of these different kinds of things. This one is definitely talking in a veiled manner. I mean, literally is forthcoming about the fact that it's a veiled metaphor in the very first paragraph. It says basically, this is about alchemy. Read it from that perspective, and you seek and thee shall find, that sort of thing. Very interesting work. The allegory itself is quite dense and intriguing. It talks a lot about like fornication and partying and women and wine and song and stuff like that. It's quite lovely. It's a fantasy work. And then, of course, the book listings are really the meat and bones, though, of the work. As long as you're interested in purveying more literary material for whatever purpose. Again, link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links are to my books blogs. If it's alchemy you want, it's alchemy you'll get. I think I've got 40 different editions of alchemical lore available. I think it's still the largest category after the academic one. That's about all. Peace out.